Hi, this is Julie. In this video we'll be taking a look at graphing a linear equation in slope-intercept form in which the slope is negative. We're going to graph the equation y equals negative 1/2 x plus 3. So I know from previous examples and the other work that we've done with slope-intercept form that the 3 here tells me that the y-intercept of this line is at the point 0, 3. So I'm going to go ahead and mark a point at 0, 3 on the graph. That's going to be my starting point. And then I also know from the work that we've done before that m in this equation is negative 1/2, and that's what represents the slope. And I'm going to use the slope to graph a couple more points on this line. Now, where students sometimes get confused is by the fact that we've got this negative here in front of the slope, and sometimes they have a hard time deciding where to put the negative or how to think about that negative. So we actually have 3 options. The first option is to think of the negative as being in the numerator. So I can think of the slope as being negative 1 over 2. Well, I know that the top number tells me how far up or down to go. And because the numerator here is negative, I'm actually going to move down 1 space from my starting point at the y-intercept. The denominator, which is 2, is positive, so that means I'm still going to move 2 spaces to the right. After moving down 1 space, 2 spaces to the right, I'm going to mark a second point right here at 2, 2. And I could go ahead and just connect those 2 points together and draw my line, but I'm going to look at the second example of what I can do with that negative sign. So you might guess the other thing I could do is take the negative sign and put it into the denominator. So that means I'm going to think about my slope as being 1 over negative 2. And that means numerator is going to tell me to move up 1 unit from my starting point, and the denominator is going to tell me to move to the left, because negative means to the left, 2 units from my starting point. So I'm going to go back and use the y-intercept, which was my original starting point, as my starting point to graph a third point on the line here. So from the y-intercept I'm going to move up 1 unit and to the left 2, and I'm going to mark a point at negative 2, 4. Now the good thing is that all 3 of these points have actually lined up in a line, which is good. That's what we want. So I'm going to go ahead and connect them together. And remember again, draw your line going all the way across your graphing space. Put a set of arrows on each end of the line to show that it extends infinitely in both directions. And now I have a line for the equation y equals negative 1/2 x plus 3. Now I did mention that there's a third thing that you can think about, or a third way that you can think about that negative sign, or a third place to put it, and that's out in front of the slope, which is how it's actually written in the original equation. Thinking about the entire fraction as being negative doesn't really help us that much in plotting individual points, but it does help us in looking at the line overall. I know that if my slope is negative, my line should be running downhill as I go from left to right across the graph. And so it's just kind of a good double check to take a look and see if I have a negative slope in my equation, my line should go downhill as I move from left to right. Another way of thinking about that is that as the x values get bigger, the y values should be getting smaller as I look at the solutions to my equation. And so that's it for this equation. In the next video, we'll look at a related example in which the slope is negative and a whole number.